You would think that Tim with that mask on would be dancing more, but yeah, he's still shy. Is that German shyness?
Also, I'm about to die in here.
All right, so we'll get right to it. Welcome to another episode of Drinks with MakerDAO Delegates. I'm your host, Frank Cruz, co-host, and
I am Raphael from Flipside Crypto, and
all right. Terrific. Great introduction. Our co-host today, Raphael, and Secretariat.
Probably Raphael. Sorry, probably. I don't know.
Probably
not sure.
Raphael. Yeah. On today's show, we have brought back a face you might have seen before. The sensation, the CES facilitator, Retro. What's going on, brother?
Hey, good morning, guys. Happy to be back. Lots happened since we last talked, so excited to get into it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we also have his partner in crime, the other half of the DAO Duo, as we like to call him here in the MakerDAO community, none other than SES's own co-facilitator, Juan.
Nice to be here, guys. It's always a pleasure to be surrounded by this lovely crew.
Yes, it's the AI overlords known as MakerDAO Delegates, as we are being branded this morning. So as we always kick off our show, we always do a drink with MakerDAO Delegates. Raphael, what are you drinking today?
So I'm drinking water. This is the day I'm drinking water, and it's water from Munich. That's called Aqua Monaco. Munich is also known as Monaco di Bavaria. Pretty douchey name, but they like it here. And this is, I think, Munich tap water bottled and then sold for exorbitant prices. So I'm looking forward to that one. And
have you been boozing yesterday, or is that just?
So I'm actually at the moment in the city. I'm in the Mercedes-Benz showroom, which is also a nice place to hang out. It's like actually quite cozy, and you can sit here and work for as long as you want. They don't really interfere.
What about you, Shupi? What are you drinking today?
Yeah, so detox month is over. It's February. We can start drinking again. So I'm here with a small bottle of Mintu Choco. I think I brought Mintu in one of the first shows last summer. Mintu is a peppermint liquor from Finland. It goes with like 50% alcohol. This is a special one. It has a taste of chocolate inside, so it goes with 35%. I'm gonna bring one of those bottles to Denver in 4 weeks. You have to drink it really, really cold. It's really good. I love it. Cheers.
Looking forward to that.
It's a 5-star thing. It's perfect. You're gonna love it in Denver.
Oh man. What about you, Juan? I bet you got some yerba mate, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm drinking mate. This yerba is it's one of the classics, mainstreams. So it's not great, but it's not bad. Let's see if it will show up. But it's Rosamonte.
Rosamonte.
Yeah, it's fine. It's drinkable. It's one of the ones that you get in the supermarket. There are a lot more yerbas that are like very, I don't know, like organic or from some crazy little farm. So this was one of the big ones that you find in the big supermarkets. So it's okay. I'll give it 3 stars, 3.5, let's say.
3.5. All right. So we got a 3.5, a 5-star, and a 3.5. Terrific. I have and I'll let you go next, Retro, but the reason why is because I have a bottle of Prosecco here, and I'm going to make myself a mimosa. While Retro, you tell us what you're drinking, and I pop this thing open. Hopefully I don't hit myself in the eye.
Yeah, for today's show, I brought more of a local brew. Last time was an import. This is called Spotted Cow by Nuglaris. It's made by a local brewery here. It's one of their most popular ones. I think you can still only get it in Wisconsin. Maybe they started selling over the border, but just so happens that I forgot a bottle opener, so I'll have to review it from memory. I would rate this about a 4. It's one of, like I said, the more popular ones. It's a great beer to sip on the weekends with friends, basically any type of situation. But yeah, forgot a bottle opener, and it's kind of 9 a.m. here. So
yeah, I mean, you guys have some amazing breweries out in Milwaukee, so I can only imagine. Some of the top, I think Zombie Dust is one of the top rated breweries in the United States. If you know Zombie Dust, then that should be a 5-star if you ever get your hands on that. But here's my mimosa. It's got some California orange juice. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's kind of transparent. But yeah, guys, yeah, it is early in the morning. The reason why I am having a Prosecco, right? And cheers to all you guys. And we're entering a new phase of the MakerDAO Constitution. Cheers to that.
Cheers to the Constitution. I have a second shot now for the Constitution.
Woo! How about that? All right, let's get into it. We have a lot to cover this week. Besides the introduction of the MakerDAO Constitution, there also has been an introduction of DAO-Level Objectives, better known as DLOs. And the author of that DLO, and you can also let us know if you had some help there by Juan and others. But Retro, you were the author of DLOs and also the working proposals. So I get all these acronyms and I try to remember them as best as I can because there's so many acronyms to MakerDAO. So kind of give us a breakdown as simple as possible. What exactly is a DLO?
Yeah, so this was the brainchild of both Juan and I. We started work on this back in August, where the DAO was really experiencing several problems that related to not only just budgeting, but dictating work correctly. So to set the scene, it was about a year and a half after core units were started. The DAO was in a situation where we had to both address some budget issues as well as some strategic issues. And the tools that delegates and governance had really wasn't as sharp as they could be. The project-based budgeting post that Juan published back in August really talked about a lot of the observations of those problems, which really related to both consensus and coordination problems. So to address those problems, we developed the concept of a DLO, which defines work to form consensus around the work, and then a work proposal is for the project itself to accomplish the objective, which is more of the coordination tool. So a DLO is a consensus tool for defining an opportunity, and a work proposal is a coordination tool for enabling a team to accomplish that work.
So maybe I can jump in here with a question. So would two different teams propose each? Like, let's say, I don't know, a sub-DAO or a core unit would propose a DLO, and then the people who want to do the work propose the work? Or like, can you go a little bit into the relationship between the two?
We'll see how this evolves, but what we've been seeing, or the way we thought about it is, especially if you go back to the past and you forget about anything that has to do with Endgame. So even if we go back to the times where there were like core units and we just had the MIP set, basically what could happen now is that instead of having like this declaration of intent, which is very much non-binding and non-specific, anyone can come up with a DLO and say, hey, we should do, I don't know, A, B, and C. You know, as an example, it could be like we should integrate with more, I don't know, exchanges around the world or in emerging countries. And then people can submit working proposals and can either compete among each other. So you can imagine two teams saying like, we can do, I don't know, an ambassadors program in Latin America, and then you can judge each team and the implementation. Or you could have one in Latin America and the other one in Africa, and they are both, they're not competing between each other. It's more like I'll focus on this market and I'll focus on this other market. So we believe that separating the objective from the work will lead to much better conversations where we are not discussing, okay, this is, and this has happened in the past, right? Where we say, okay, we really need, I don't know, growth, or we really need marketing in MakerDAO. It's like, yeah, but do we need this marketing team? Do we need this growth initiative? So the idea of separating them, it will give anyone the tools to perform a much better declaration of intent through a DLO, and then the work proposal will be a way of answering to that DLO. And if we push that to the extreme and we say, okay, MIP 40s are canceled now and SPFs are canceled and MIP 14s are canceled, then the only way of getting money out of the protocol is through a work proposal. If that's the case, then that will mean that every work proposal needs to be attached to a DLO. So every DLO will have to be discussed, and then we will be able to have a much clearer vision of where we want Maker to go. Right now, there's no coherent vision in most of the proposals, and we believe that this tool is a step in the right direction.
Did this evolve in tandem with the project-based funding? Like when you proposed project-based funding and you discussed that, did you already have a structure like that in mind, or was that like at what point did you think about, okay, this is project-based funding and this is the way we wanna achieve that?
Yeah, so we changed the project-based for work-based because we thought that it encompasses much better what we're trying to do. When we wrote that blog post back in August, we called it project-based, and that might be a solution. But what we really wanted to say is like, let's focus on the work that's going to be done instead of the teams. So that's what changed. That said, it works really well with project-based budgeting if that's what we want. But it could also work with, hey, I want to maintain oracles and it's something ongoing, or I want to maintain governance, it's something ongoing. So that's not necessarily a project, and it could also work with that. So that's a bit what we're standing at right now.
Okay, that's a really interesting point. Maybe I can hone in on that a little bit. So basically, there could be work that's like super time limited in scope. Basically, like I do X and then it's finished and I get paid. But I can also say my work is actually like something ongoing, like maintaining or another task like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a bit the idea.
But when I read the proposal, like I think DLOs are always limited in time scope. So how does that work? Do they then just, are they like these refresher mechanisms, or they just get to be reproposed, or how's the mechanism?
Yeah, I think and retro jumping in if I'm wrong, but I think the default that we added right now is 1 year. So we believe that objectives need to be reviewed from time to time. That's why there's this time to pretty much kill an objective automatically once that it's done. But with that in mind, it could be kind of like copy paste and rolled over into the next year if that's what governance wants to do.
Yeah, and to build on that a little bit too, we really wanted to draw from the DAO's existing tools, so this wasn't a massive change when we're introducing a new way of enabling funding. So if you look at the MIP 40s, they last about a year. There's that assumption then we're going to review the team's work and see how it's going. If you look at a project like maintenance work through that lens, it's probably good to see that the team has performed that work for the past year and see if there's any adjustments that need to happen. And then for the MIP 55 SPF funding as well, we wanted to mimic the time that a proposal lasted in RFC, but we kind of split it between the two. So right now an SPF lasts about 2 months in RFC and then goes into a vote. The DLO and work proposal both being a month in their own right then would enable around the same timeline. So those were the two inspirational points for those concepts.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's fair to assume that the DLO kind of allows MKR token owners, anyone in governance, such as delegates, facilitators, to kind of track the progress. Is it possible that and I'm just taking this core unit as an example, of the growth core unit team, their mandate is to sign an APAC, Asia Pacific, distributor of MakerDAO products in that region, a DLO with an attached work proposal will give us more kind of a visual into what's happening there, as opposed to growth core unit just doing it without a DLO the old-fashioned way, and trying to build something out in APAC and Asia Pacific, and the community and MKR token owners and delegates not knowing what's going on. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I think this tool provides governance with much stronger capabilities of directing the workforce. So right now, what happens is that any core unit will say, we'll do A, B, and C, and maybe you like A and B, and you don't want them to do C, but because MIP 39 said we'll also do C, they can pretty much focus their energies on C. So yeah, and this is more extreme with critical core units. So you can imagine protocol engineering being like, we'll do 10% of something that's really critical, and the other 90% will build, I don't know, whatever we want to build. And if governance doesn't want that, they have no way of addressing that, because when you approve a budget or a core unit, it's all or nothing. It's yes or no. With this situation, you could say like, okay, the DLO is to build, I don't know, to go into L2s or to build Maker Teleport, or you can choose pretty much what the objective is. And then core units can say like, hey, I want to submit a work proposal for this, to build this, what the DAO wants. So we believe that this tool is much more powerful to direct the work and to make sure that things get done in the order or the priority that governance wants them done.
I'm not entirely sure if this is really done with that, because I mean, let's stick to the protocol engineering example that they basically propose work for two different things. One is really important and one is, yeah, whatever. You still, from the outside, you still have no idea if they are spending all the funds for the right thing, right? So there, and to be honest, I don't think we should go into this direction of really having this kind of micromanagement, micro view on all the activities there. So, but yeah, I think there is always room for interpretation on how the funds are spent, and because of the lack of visibility on what's actually going on. Sorry?
No, I was going to say we fully agree, and it's not about the micromanagement. It's more about the, hey, there's this objective. You submit a work proposal, and then has this work proposal advanced that objective, yes or no? So you can still have someone asking for a lot of funds and not complying or doing whatever they said they were going to do, but now it's much more clearer and you have the objective. Before it was more like, okay, there's A, B, C, D, E, and F, and people are actually just want to do F, and F was actually one line in their MIP 39. So they are like, oh, it's in our mandate. So this is a bit, we're trying to flip the dynamic and the conversation.
Yeah, but I think what is actually even more powerful and more important to actually have is competition between multiple parties applying for the same stuff. Because if you're in the end spending the money on the wrong things, then you're effectively burning your credibility towards those who were gonna renew your contract or not, right? But if there is no competition, you cannot burn your credibility, or effectively you don't, because you're effectively holding the whole system hostage. So I think instead of aiming for micromanaging or micro measuring, I think we should just go more into this direction of fostering contributors from different parties to the same objectives, I think. But it's not I'm not criticizing your work there, totally not. I just think that's the more scalable solution on the long run.
No, and we want all the criticism. So if you have anything and any type of feedback, please feel free. We've actually discussed with different people in the community, most notably Long for Wisdom, and he said, guys, if you can postpone the whole thing for another month, I think that we can get in a much better shape. So that's one of the things that we're doing moving forward. And the second thing that we'll do is that we'll try to create the templates, so a bit like the sub proposals to go with it. So working through them and actually going through the process will give us a perspective to make sure that that all the corner cases are being covered. So any section that we forgot, anything that we want to ask, we can edit it while we go through through a real process instead of just being like, oh, this is an idea and not going through it.
Maybe if I can just latch onto that, because like at the moment we have this declaration of intent about RWA monitoring, and I have to say the response is really off the charts. Like we're super happy about that. I'm super happy about that, but it feels like, first of all, like this time window that I proposed is much too short. And then like the whole thing is getting bigger and bigger the more we dive into that. So it seems like, could you imagine that this could be a DLO in a way?
Yeah, definitely. I think that DLO checkpoint is that first opportunity to say, yeah, the DAO wants this product or wants the service or wants the value that the project represents. And then going back to the competition point as well, the original proposal introduced the idea and assigned the work all in one. with the DLO and work proposal structure, introducing it as a DLO gets the work confirmed as an available opportunity, and then it could signal to the diverse teams within the ecosystem even today to say this is an opportunity to increase funding, to add in a new resource for a month to deliver this specific work, and then it's not directly tied to the submitter. So in a different universe where this went DLO and then work proposal first, I would expect there would have been a couple teams potentially jockeying for that potential income and revenue. But going back to Tim's point real quick, because I do want to touch on that real briefly, in terms of like the specific insight that would be requested from teams and reporting on the use of their budgets. The work proposal is really supposed to represent the slow transition to a vendor type relationship, which the Endgame is really promoted as well. But at the end of the day, using the RWA example as well, it's one line item to deliver the service, right? That could be one way to orchestrate a DOL, a work proposal. Another opportunity then saying, addressing specifically the MKR retention plans and incentive plans that could require more reporting. And then that's the only area where we care about the workforce staff and the FTEs and coming up with some way to reporting it. So then we're requesting the appropriate information for the appropriate use. And then to your point as well, I think also trying to get away from how we have been managing core units, maybe more as a department instead of a vendor. This would potentially support that, but allow us to fine tune what we need when. And then ultimately too, when we get to the point where we don't care about some of those levels of reporting, we can potentially lock down the framework then to say, this is out of scope. This is black box territory. We want to focus more on the work and the project.
And something I wanted to touch on, because Juan, you were the author of MIP 394041. You participated in writing that.
Sorry.
And the reason why I brought it up was it was the early days of the unwinding of the foundation. And a lot of teams had to quickly move into ecosystem actors, for lack of a better word, because we needed core units to start doing the work, such as protocol engineering. Now that we are transitioning to the end game, you guys are delaying the MIP 97 going to a vote, MIP 98 as well. And I was wondering if you can kind of explain to MKR token owners and delegates alike of why do you guys believe that before MIP 97, 96, and 98 pass governance, right? MKR token owners and delegates voted through. Why do you think it's important for ecosystem actors to already start using the DLO as a way to fund some kind of initiative that they are thinking of for the end game plan?
So we believe that the DLOs is almost or should be almost independent. We believe that DLO is a tool, hopefully a better tool. So even if there was no endgame plan, we would still be proposing this because we think that it's much better than SPFs, MIP 14s and MIP 40s. So with that in mind, we think that I think that we need to work through this first example first, because that will actually show people the power and be like, okay, we're discussing the objective and here we're discussing the work proposal. So this is great versus the, hey, this is another SPF for 90K. Should we do it or not? And it's like, oh, this really needs to be done, or it's a lot of money. So it's about separating this thing, as we were mentioning before. With that in mind, we want this to become the better tool, and hopefully, if it's so much superior, we will only go through this tool. But anyone that wants to work for Endgame could also use any of the other available and battle-tested tools as the SPF or MIP 40, MIP 14, or whatever they need to. So right now it's the very early stage infancy of this tool, but hopefully it becomes the kind of like the best way of discussing things.
Yeah, so in short, I guess what you're saying is that this can be rolled out as soon as possible for anyone, as opposed to using an SPF. So I'm super excited to see who's going to be the first. Any way you guys can drop some alpha on us, and any candidates that might be lurking out there that can use a DLO to be the first one to post one.
I don't know if we're allowed to drop the alpha for the ones that we are working with. But with that in mind, I mean, I've seen some of the delegates being very active on proposing stuff, and I think that's great. So I wouldn't be surprised if actually delegates have this like this attitude or mentality of start drafting DLOs, like, oh, we should do this, this, and this. Or the way I see Maker evolving is by doing all these things. So eventually, this might actually become a tool for delegates to explain their platforms in a much concrete way and actually start asking for funds and stuff instead of the of all the words right now, which are much harder to identify or to differentiate between one delegate to the next, right? Right now, it's very hard for anyone that's not or that doesn't know you guys very well to distinguish you. So hopefully with this, it will be a better way of saying, okay, Frank wants to, I don't know, he's really pushing for growth, so he has posted all these DLOs where we can really see that that he's for growth. Or I don't know, Raf wants to focus on visibility and dashboards and transparency, so he's really pushing for all these dashboards. Here are all the DLOs and the proposals, and it's pretty much like opening an RFP, so request for proposals, and you're pretty much telling the whole world, hey, there's this money available, the maker has this objective, so for the next year you can actually apply and maybe get one of these things. So here, as Mr. Pfert was mentioning, this will hopefully bring competition and will improve the maker ecosystem as a whole.
Regarding evaluation or arbitration of the work being done, have you thought about any like accounting and monitoring standards that you like to include, or how people report on progress, or what's the thinking there?
Yeah, so I think that's a perfect segue to go to the probably least talked about MIP, which would be MIP 96, the auditor framework. The way that is being proposed, it's an optional tool and something that we're trying to develop more as like a label for work that gets submitted in this consistent manner that allows us to see insights with justifiable and proof behind the expenses. The reporting work that I think that still needs to be defined would be more on like the actual project work, like trying to develop some sort of consistent process then around the actual deliverables that are being produced. But from a financing perspective, we feel that framework, again, gives a tool in an easy and a concise way to say that, this DLO requires a work proposal that is ecosystem audited, and now everybody knows what that means. It's MIP 96 basically distilled down into one phrase, and then from there both governance and the workforce has expectations of the data that they're going to be able to receive and how it's going to be presented, and then the other side is the data that's required to be collected and presented by the workforce. So that makes it an easy tool for any DLO author to apply to say, we do want this standard in place for this work. But again, really mean a whole lot more in the background.
If you guys had a crystal ball, are KPIs going to be a thing for the MakerDAO realm?
Yeah, I don't know. When you write a DLO, you can be super specific and you can be like, you need to hit these KPIs. That said, KPIs are extremely hard to set. There are a lot of inconveniences that come with KPIs that at one point you're just trying to game the KPI instead of focusing on producing value. So if you set the wrong KPI, it actually might be a really bad thing compared to just expressing the value. So I think that they are good in general, but they might be a double-edged sword where it actually brings more damage than progress. So hopefully we might or we become an organization that's much more transparent and we can actually quantify stuff. But I don't see that happening in the short term.
Yeah, I can just I can totally subscribe to that. So companies who are really dogmatic about approaches like OKRs, even most of those companies realized that it's not leading into a very, very good direction. So I don't see that coming as well. And there's one thing that I would really love to know. I don't know, you probably don't want to drop names, but there are very few people inside the workforce right now that are really, really visible in terms of really bringing the whole DAO to the next level, not only about Endgame, but really about, well, the stuff you're doing could be done without Endgame as well. Is it just very few people that are visible and a lot of people are behind that and actively collaborating on that, but not being visible? Or is it really just a very small group like the two of you and, I don't know, Peyton, for example?
No, the group is smaller than it looks like.
It's smaller than it looks like.
No,
So
no,
it's
I'm
not
half
even
joking
the two
only.
of
But
you.
it's retro, and I show up from time to time. But no, jokes aside, if you know of any great talent that's looking for some governance design challenges, please refer them to us, because we're definitely looking to expand and to keep working on these challenges. We're working on a lot of things simultaneously and kind of like running around to see what's the most pressing issue, launching communities, launching sub-DAOs, attracting these people, generating the spark. There's all these discussions about like the charity, for example, like what do you want to do with all this thing? How do you create a sub-DAO that's unique? So we're constantly thinking about these things while at the same time working on all the scopes, all the frameworks, trying to get that off the ground. Right now we're starting an initiative to actually evaluate different tools in Web3 that can potentially be used by different scopes. So we're working on that as well. So yeah, lots of things, lots of running around and tight deadlines, but hopefully that brings us to a better position soon. TM.
I was really interested about the current workforce that is not participating in all this restructuring our way of working, because honestly I think it's a missed opportunity if you are right now part of the workforce and not contributing to that, because it's actually a unique position to shape your personal future as well, and the future and the way of working of our organization. So if you miss out on that, it's a missed opportunity, I think. So I find it, it's a bit sad that it's just not that many people actually contributed on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been thinking about that, and when I speak to people and they are not jumping at the opportunities, like maybe I'm one of the most uninspiring people in the world. But I don't know. I think that it's hard to articulate the problem and the opportunity to someone that's not someone that didn't get it yet. Once you do it, it's super easy, right?
Sorry, I mean, I think just to like take the opposite side of the argument, I completely agree with Tim, but I think two main blockers that I see. One is information about what the end game is extremely hard to obtain, and it's constantly shifting. I think that's a big hurdle for people, especially if they are used to a lot of structure. And the second is an easy place where they see how they can get involved. I think that's just hard. I mean, I think I'm kind of trying to do my best to just push stuff on the forums, and some is like people are like, yay, and then others are not so. The community is not so excited about, but for me that's okay, right? But I think for somebody who thinks like, ooh, their job might be on the line if things fall flat, or they don't want to step on the wrong foot or something. So I think that there is some work to be done to make contributing like super low bar, right?
Yeah, we were actually discussing that with Retro yesterday on our one-on-one. But it's how do we make sure that we structure the frameworks for each scope in a way that it's open for anyone? So if you say, okay, I'm super interested in real world assets or decentralized collateral, I can come in and help and start these conversations almost as soon as possible, because we believe that having these conversations over and over will create these very strong frameworks. But yeah, this goes back to the bandwidth, right? And getting it right. So right now we are running like a very small, kind of like closed for one of the scope, which is governance security. We think that that's one of the easiest ones to get right. So how do you write the spells? What checks you need to put there? And hopefully going through this will give us a good idea of what it takes to facilitate one of these. This becomes much harder if you have no clue about the topic. So for example, the growth scope, like how do you go about it, right? I'm not an expert in marketing. So for me, it's like, okay, maybe we can discuss about branding and what sub-DAOs can and cannot do to make sure that they do not misrepresent Maker, for example. But what else? Like how do you make sure that that these things are working in a way that work for everyone? So in some areas it's easier. In some areas it's less easy. But we are trying to open that hopefully very soon, so that we can get all these talented people that are looking at Maker to contribute in a way or another.
I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that kind of a DLO right there?
I was going to say that the hardest part right now is probably creating the motivation to stick through this like period of like rapid changes and a little bit of turmoil. But once the system really gets going and like the projects start falling in line and there's clarity everywhere, DLOs will be one tool to pull people in and have people point as like consistent work if they just want to do what they're good at. We'll have these committees then being formed that will allow other people to get more strategic and be more on the conversational part. So again, in the very near future, we see this landscape where it's, do you want to come in and do something that's, you know, pretty well defined and scoped and not worry about the governance complexity? Great. Go do your work and come back to us when you're done. Do you want to play with the wigs and robes a little bit and talk about, you know, more of the frameworks and strategy and assessments? Well, there's a committee here for you. Do you want to be more of the gears that are actually bridging the gap between the two and creating, you know, the operations, which is the DAO? Then there's a facilitator DAO for you here. Do you want to play in real world assets? Go talk to these guys. You want to play in, you know, the vibrant ecosystems coming. It's just really right now, I think refining the message to be a little bit simpler. Maybe making a couple less changes in the short term, but that's just the period we're in right now. Just to preview it a little bit, I guess the Endgame Constitution, you know, really gets me excited because now we have something that refines the near future. It creates those conversations. It creates the opportunity to start doing some work. And yeah, it also creates more problems and challenges to work through, but that's what we're here for. So let's keep marching forward.
So if someone's watching this, what is in your opinion, what would be your recommendation to allow them to join this new movement? Would you recommend that they just reach out to one of the proposed clusters? In your mind, if you had to recruit folks from Europe, Asia, North America, South America, what is the easiest way, do you believe, for them to dig into the MakerDAO ecosystem?
So as an example, a good DLO could be develop the frameworks for the 12 scopes. Then we can be more specific, right? But that would be like the big idea. And then once that's done, anyone could come and be like, oh, I actually have, I don't know, 20 years of experience in growth. I have this experience with Web3 projects. I've done this, this, and this. I would love to contribute for this amount of money. And then we can start actually fund people to make sure that Endgame happens. And that's for anything. So I think that the DLOs might be a way of being more concrete about what needs to happen for Endgame. And this is not only for the scopes, right? Like you can be like, oh, I want to code Elixir. I want to make sure that I want to sandbox, I don't know, ETH DAI. So anything that needs to be done, anyone could be like, oh, I'm super interested by this. Hopefully we take care, and by we I mean delegates and ourselves, of the DLOs. And then this is almost like an open call for anyone as a request for proposal, and people start kind of like applying and making sure that that Endgame happens, and then Maker becomes more resilient. So that's a bit the plan and what we're hoping it will happen.
And does the Maker Constitution and at least an outline of the scope frameworks have to be published before Mary Jane can come out of left field and start participating?
No, I actually had a lot of people approaching us and saying, hey guys, I want to contribute to Maker. How should I do it? And I usually try to tell them or I tell them to read the scopes and go through the scopes and see if they are interested in one of the things. And I think that the scopes are a good way of separating the work that needs to be done. And once that's done, then it's much easier to start guiding them and telling them like, hey, right now we haven't started, or why don't you join these calls? And we can start opening it. But that's a bit where we're at. It's like what interests you from Maker, what do you want to do? And sometimes it's like, oh, I want to do factoring for companies in Bangladesh. It's like, okay, in that case, SubDAO is probably the way to go. So try to see what clusters are doing. We might be able to help you there. So I think that's a bit the beauty of Endgame. It's that now you have very clearly separated what's core work for the protocol to move forward, and what's a project that requires a Maker to power them and create that from scratch. So I think once we get this done, it will be actually quite powerful.
So this is a very interesting point, because I think when you look at the Endgame and going forward, there's almost like it needs this kind of routing function, right? Like that routes the right information to the right people to the right places. Who do you think is performing this function in the Endgame? Is that the ecosystem scope, or
maybe we're at a really bad position where everything that doesn't fit goes into the ecosystem scope a bit. So that's why I think that we're a bit understaffed. But with that in mind, yeah, I think that our job should get progressively easier as everything gets built. So hopefully at some point it will be just like, okay, like continuous improvement, and how can we make things better? How can we attract things better? And this is a bit why we started this project, and more news to be released soon. But why we started this tool evaluation kind of like team or framework, and because at some point it's like, okay, there are all these tools out there. Which one should we use? How are they worth it or not? And then we think that this might help as well. So yeah, right now it kind of falls into us. Maybe we self-inflicted that pain for better and worse, but yeah, hopefully we'll make it.
Yeah, but some of that routing will be built into the tokenomics and the incentives that exist.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily going to be up to facilitator DAOs to say work with, you know, A or B sub DAO. It's we're marketing, we're advertising, you know, we want to compete. Why should you come to us over our competition, which is another creator or another real world asset sub DAO? And I think the further along we get and the more defined that the constitution gets, and once we're able to allow people to really play with the tokenomics and they stop being adjusted, then we get to that point where it's like, oh, here's the game, here's my role, here's, you know, how we can really extend the ecosystem to be this recursive machine of both in and outbound opportunities.
So when you look at the scope frameworks, some of them, I think you can recruit within the Ethereum or DeFi ecosystem, right? As you mentioned, Juan, you know, there's if you need an engineering to work on Elixir, or even Ether DAI, right? You could probably recruit a bunch of devs out there who are working on a different number of platforms today as I speak. So I see that being a little bit easier to fulfill the that scope framework for decentralized collateral. But perhaps there's a couple of scope frameworks where the community is going to have a harder time recruiting talent. And I think besides some of the points you guys made of why that's not happening right now is because also cryptocurrency, let's be realistic, is not a favorable industry right now, right? It's kind of falling out of favor. There's a lot of people that don't believe in it. If you were working right now at Goldman Sachs or Google, you might have a change of heart of coming over to this side. Which of the scope frameworks do you guys think will have a harder time fulfilling talent and getting built out? Or if you had a crystal ball, what would you predict would be the hardest of them all? I don't know if you guys, we want to name all of them, but maybe a couple you can think off the top of your head that you think will have a hard time initially getting some traction.
Retro. No, I was thinking maybe, I don't know. I was thinking maybe infrastructure might be a tough one.
Yeah, I might go the other direction, Frank, if I'm being honest, and say that our community is really home to, you know, some of the more mature DAO operators. So if anything, I think expanding that talent to create multiple facilitator and that middle layer is really going to be the issue, because if we nail the design, then the economic opportunity is going to be evident. The development of the scope frameworks, if they're a little bit slower, we just have to properly incentivize the creation of those to find the right talent. But when we get into a situation of like, how do we define this complex system of protecting the Constitution, further decentralizing collateral, and then enabling the operations of just like communities, front ends, that maybe it's a little biased, but I see that as a larger challenge than getting people in the door to deliver some work. So it just goes back to like simplifying the frameworks and the opportunities and the messaging for the appropriate audience. And the hardest one to simplify is that ecosystem layer to really make sure everything's operating as intended.
For sure. Interesting thoughts there. One thing I would like to point out to my fellow delegates here is that I think there's going to be, and I could be wrong, you guys can correct me, but there's probably only a short window for delegates to propose DLOs or get your ideas out there, because once the Maker Constitution rolls out, from reading the Constitution, which we're not going to get into today, there won't be there's going to be a time when delegates will not be able to propose any ideas or even interact with some of the ecosystem actors, if I'm interpreting the Constitution correctly. So not sure if you guys have any thoughts on that, the delegates, or Retro and Juan, but that's definitely, in my opinion, a small window, but I could be wrong. Maybe the Constitution and the Endgame itself won't be rolled out till 2024.
A lot to unpack, and I think Raph wants to already wrap up the call, but no, I think that the fact that delegates won't be able to deal with all these ecosystem actors is almost a feature, right? Like already having 20 plus core units was quite a headache, and it seemed that the strategy was almost to lay low as a core unit, to not be questioned about your budget, for example. So I think that the fact that now we need to do everything through frameworks and the scopes will actually make it fair for everyone and be like, this is what you need to do. Here's the available funding. So now go do it. So it's much more neutral. Hopefully there will be less of politics playing. There will be less of he's pushing for this core unit because he's friends with this or whatever, or they are also founders in this other project. So once that you make it open and transparent and you write the rules, that's when it becomes more, or hopefully it becomes more transparent. I'm not saying that there are no ways of gaming it, but for sure this should help with all the noise that we've been seeing in the forum for the last couple of years.
With that in mind, I guess we could end it here. We're not going to game the audience anymore and take up more of their time. I think that you guys have some really good grasp of what's happening with the Endgame Constitution. We would love to have you back here